Hold tight, YouTube. We need a few seconds.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
Suppose we go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2015, Hump Day Wednesday. It is a rainy day. I almost forgot what rain looked like. The major source of precipitation that we have here in New England is snow. Maybe we get a little rain in the spring, but it is storming something serious outside. So I doubt I would get a chance to go running outside. Maybe I'll just opt to go to the gym instead of outdoors. Anyway, just thinking out loud. Welcome. Thank you so much for indulging me as we switched back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I was able to get a lot done yesterday, a lot of important things for the show, a lot of things that I think you're going to appreciate, and made some connections yesterday. It was funny. One of the main reasons I went back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday was so that I could use Tuesday and Thursday to build the relationships that are necessary to move the show to the next level. And I appreciate all the feedback, all the comments, and everyone who agrees that the show really deserves to have a much broader audience. And that's what I'm taking Tuesday and Thursdays for. And on yesterday, I was contacted by some people that I'll leave nameless right now, but I was contacted by some people who may possibly, want me to, to do some business with me with regards to my show. So, it actually worked out great. I was able to, I got a lot done yesterday, and I'm going to get even more done on Thursday. So just bear with me, indulge with me as we do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I believe in no time flat, we'll be able to do 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, almost as a full-time thing. So that's that. A lot happening in the news. Of course, when you take a day off, you have a lot of catching up to do. So Donald Trump released his tax policy on Monday. Of course, I'm just getting a chance to get to it. So we'll discuss that on air this morning. President Obama met with President Putin. Both of them gave competing speeches at the UN in New York. And so I want to discuss that briefly. But more importantly, I want to discuss Russia's potential role in Syria. This morning, it was announced that Russia's parliament authorized the use of force for Russian troops, particularly the Air Force in Syria. So that's going to be definitely something that we want to unpack. And Donald Trump had an insightful encounter on the Bill O'Reilly show with regard to Syria, not so much from his perspective, but just in terms of the questions that were asked and the additional questions that it triggered in my mind. So I want to unpack the O'Reilly factor segment with Donald Trump, both on his tax policy, but more importantly, I want to unpack it in terms of his positions on Syria and the questions of what America is going to do in Syria. That's something that we've been asking on a regular basis here because it is a quagmire. It is something where there is no right solution. Any solution is going to be a bad solution. And so, that's why we want to discuss it. Then also yesterday, there was a testimony on Capitol Hill, Planned Parenthood, and an attempt to defund Planned Parenthood, an attempt to shut down the government by Ted Cruz. All of that fell flat. And I wanted to discuss some of that. Particularly, I want to discuss some of the data points that a particular congressman was trying to present as factual and show you just how far they will go to mislead the public to forward their narrative, not only against Planned Parenthood, but against all things progressive. So that's on the menu today. And just at the top, let me just mention the Red Sox manager was in New York and had a chance to work out in the gym with President Obama. And I'm a Red Sox fan because that's where I live. Now, basketball, I have been a Miami Heat fan forever. And since like 1990, I've been a Miami Heat fan. Football, I've been a New Orleans Saints fan because I grew up in New Orleans and we suffered with them for 20 something, 30, I don't know how many years before they got a Super Bowl. But you know, I never had a baseball team. So I am a Red Sox fan. And the general, not the general manager, but the manager, Lou Volos, met President Obama in the gym and worked out and said President Obama has a serious workout regimen and all these great things. So I just wanted to drop that in there. There's some pictures online of President Obama in his workout outfit. I don't know if it's you go see it and you decide for yourself what you think about it. I mean, it is what it is. So that's President Obama getting his workout on in New York. Let's go straight to Donald Trump's tax policy. Depending on what you read, what source you read, you would either believe that this is the greatest tax policy plan ever or the most ridiculous tax policy plan ever. And it's not an equivalent conversation. We're talking about 9 out of 10 articles that I read this morning discuss the ridiculousness of Donald Trump's tax plan. And then one in the Wall Street Journal merely discussed what Donald Trump claimed would happen in his tax policy plan. So that's pretty, but if you listen to the voices around the internet, you know, if you listen to talk right-wing radio, Mark Levin, you know, he swears that this is a rock solid plan. My favorite article on it is in the links by TPM, the Talking Points memo. The author compared his plan to simply being Jeb Bush's tax policy trimmed with a haircut and presented as his own work. And when you read his policy, and I actually put a PDF so you can go and see it for yourself and not read anyone else's spin, you will see that it is essentially Jeb Bush's tax policy, just with lower margins and with less chance of actually being successful. As detrimental as Jeb Bush's policy would be, which they estimate will cost the economy a deficit increase of about 1.3 to 3 trillion, depending on estimates, Donald Trump's is worse. Here's the thing. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He has absolutely no qualm with telling you one thing and doing something entirely different. So far in this entire conversation about tax policy, Donald Trump has positioned himself to be a populist, a middle class tax policy person. I don't have the right noun there, but he has been positioning himself as wanting to cut taxes on the middle class, raise taxes on the hedge fund managers. But when you get into the nuts and bolts of his policy, yes, he cuts taxes, but not on the middle class. He reduces it on anyone who makes less than $25,000 a year as a single person. He reduces it to nothing. And even in the policy, this is the absurdity of Donald Trump. He said they won't file the normal forms. They'll file an individual form that says, I win. This is literally written in his policy because they don't have to pay taxes. They win when they're only making $25,000 a year. I don't see how that is a win for anybody as a single person, and $50,000 a year if you're a married couple. I cannot imagine living on the median income here in America, particularly here in Boston. You know, I imagine if I went to Mississippi, we do just fine on $50,000 a year. But I cannot imagine someone living on $50,000 a year in a metropolitan area or any of the surrounding areas. So there is no win when you talk about someone single making $25,000 a year and someone and a married couple making $50,000 a year, which is considered to be middle class. But there is no win there. And not to harp on that one little particular detail, but it does not help the middle class, because middle class America is no longer $50,000 a year. That's the median income. That's if you line up everybody in America, the one in the middle is the median income, and it's roughly $50,000 a year. That is not a middle class life. depending on where you live. But in most parts of the country, $50,000 for a married couple is just enough not to be in a homeless shelter. So Donald Trump cast this entire narrative over the last couple of months as being this tax populist. And what he came out with is just this, what David K. Johnston called trickle-down economics on steroids. And this is the caveat, without the intellectual heft of George W. Bush. That is the most insulting statement that you could give someone, to say that they have a plan that's like George W. Bush on steroids, just without the intellect. I'll let you figure out why that's funny. But so here's Donald Trump. He has been positioning himself over the last couple of months as this populist, only to roll out this program that is completely in favor of the top 1%, completely in favor of the wealthiest among us, and it's going to explode the deficit and thereby exploding the debt. He claims that it's going to be revenue neutral, but it's impossible for it to be revenue neutral based on what he's presented. All right, so that's the lead up. I want to play for you his interview with Bill O'Reilly on last night, and he speaks for himself, and then we'll break it up a little bit. Here's Donald Trump on.
But I'm trying to get the $20 trillion debt around my neck. I understand you're doing what Ronald Reagan did. You're doing what Ronald Reagan did. You want to stimulate the free marketplace by putting more money back into it, more research and development, more job creation. That's what you're trying to do. And I actually agree that has to be done now, after 7 years of Barack Obama failing to stimulate the economy.
All right, let me pause it there. All right, so that's actually Bill O'Reilly's, his lead up to asking Donald Trump a question about his tax policy. I wanted to stop it there because it is the exact continuation of trickle-down economics, exactly what Ronald Reagan did, exactly what George W. Bush did, exactly the same psychosis. I have to consider it at this point a psychosis to believe that you can continue to do the same exact thing that has been proven to be detrimental to the overall economy, to the middle-class economy. Let me be specific, to the middle-class economics, as well as to the government and the deficit and the debt. Right? Trickle down economics is exactly what this policy is. That's exactly what Jeb Bush offered. That's exactly what George W. Bush implemented. And that's exactly what Ronald Reagan implemented. There is no difference between the policies, with exception of percentage points. And so here, Bill O'Reilly is presenting this as a feasible idea, in the sense that it's going to stimulate the economy, which is not accurate. I'll deal with that in a second. I might deal with that at the end of the show because it is not proven. It has not been proven to stimulate, to be the factor that stimulates the economy. It coincided in 1981. It coincided with the boom of the boom bust cycle, right? It coincided with upturn in the market. It coincided with the expansion of credit markets and the expansion of people buying homes and buying things on credit, giving the impression that people were doing better. Yes, it coincided, but correlation does not equate to causality. So it has not been proven. What has been proven is that trickle-down economics guts the coffers and leads to greater deficits and absolutely leads to greater debt. This is the only portion that Bill O'Reilly is being intellectually and journalistically, if I don't know if that's a word, but I'll use it, ethical and accurate, in the sense that he's calling him on it. He's saying that I don't see how your plan is going to be tax revenue neutral, and I don't understand how you're going to cover this enormous deficit that you're going to build up with this plan. All right, so that's what's going on. I'll deal with the Obama failing to stimulate the economy. I'm going to deal with all that in a minute, but I want you to hear from Donald Trump what his response was. Here's Donald Trump.
However, your plan was going to bring down government revenue. All right, they're going to get less money. So you say, but in the long run, they'll get more because more people will be in the workplace, more people will be paying taxes, and it'll go up. Fine, but speculative. Right. Fine, but speculative. So the only thing I'm hearing that you're going to knock out are these hedge fund guys carrying money from one year to the next. And I don't know if that's going to be enough to stop the debt from rising another $5 trillion.
Okay, so apparently, I was more impressed with Bill O'Reilly than Donald Trump, because Bill O'Reilly is giving the accurate estimation. He even called the idea that revenues will come in more based on tax cuts as speculative, which he's trying to carve out this position. And I'm talking about Bill O'Reilly now. I guess I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Bill O'Reilly. He's trying to carve out this position so that he could not tell everyone that trickle down economics doesn't work, but if someone ever calls him on it, he wouldn't have to confess to lying, right? So he's going to say that's speculative. I don't think it's a speculation anymore at this point. After years and years and years of data, it has been shown that, well, let me stop that sentence because that's not 100% accurate. I'm going to stop the sentence. I'm going to say that we have not been able to demonstrate that there is a causal relationship between tax cuts and the increase in revenues that we saw during the 80s. Like, as I stated before, what we did see was a boom. We saw a boom in the boom bust cycle. Now, let's see if Donald Trump ever said anything that's worthwhile. Let's see if Donald Trump says something here.
No, the big thing we're doing, Bill, is when I get in, and I will tell you this, and I said this very clearly, I'm a cost cutter. I know how to cut costs. We have tremendous waste and abuse in this country. If you look at some of the things that are happening in the country in terms of costs,
give me one big thing you're going to cut. One big thing you're going to cut right away.
I'm going to cut big Department of Education, as an example.
All right. So, and that's all he has, the Department of Education. And then he later on mentions the EPA. To pay for this, I believe it was somebody estimated almost $12 trillion worth of increase in the deficit, in the debt rather, over the next decade. He's going to cut the Department of Education, which I believe the Department of Education might be a few dozen billion dollars, right? Maybe I think 20 billion. I don't have the number in front of me, but I do know that it is nowhere near over the next decade going to be $1 trillion worth of revenue that can be saved by cutting the entire Department of Education and cutting the entire Environmental Protection Agency. It just cannot happen. So here he is. He has fallen back to the default Republican establishment position on tax policy. I guarantee you this is not because of Donald Trump as much as it is because of his team, who knows that if Donald Trump wants to stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting the nomination, that he has to play ball on tax policy. He has to. He cannot waver from the Rosetta Stone, the North Star of the Republican Party, which is cut taxes by any means. And he's been talking as though over the last few months, that's exactly what he's going to do. But when he wrote out this puny tax plan, I want you to look at the link and look. It basically looks like a senior high school report, in my opinion. This is something that you would turn in high school. At worst, you would turn this in on an undergraduate level. So there's no meat, there's no substance to it. It's just one table and a bunch of talking points. And he turns this in as tax policy. But that's besides the point. The point is, we've seen Donald Trump do a 180 reversal on all of his talking points on middle class economics, saving the middle class and taxing the hedge fund managers. But he wraps it neatly. Now, he wraps it just like Jeb Bush. They cut the corporate tax rate so low that it's going to gut our coffers. He offers an opportunity for a tax holiday for all of the money that's in the Cayman Islands, all the money that's overseas, all the money that's been stored in tax inversions to avoid taxes here in the United States. He gives them a tax holiday to bring it back at 10% instead of the normal tax rate. And he also says that he's going to tax now. Here's his only pittance of populism is by taxing carried interest at the same rate that you would tax, taxing capital gains at the same rate that you would tax income. But he's cutting income taxes down to 25%, I believe was his top margin. This is nothing more than Jeb. This is exactly what the Talking Points memo article stated. This is Jeb Bush's tax policy with the haircut, which means Donald Trump essentially has done two things. He has surrendered to the establishment on tax policy, and he's just proven that he just does not have the intellectual heft to be to be a serious clown candidate, if I could put those two words together. That's essentially what he's proven to us. So Donald Trump is, we waited for this tax policy. I don't know if anybody ever thought it was going to be serious, but he had an opportunity to actually catch the attention of, I would say, Reagan Democrats, right? Of that crowd of Democrats who are blue dog Democrats who want middle class economics, but also want to be fiscally conservative, that kind of thing. And he's just demonstrated that he just does not have what it takes to be a serious contender. And maybe I shouldn't even put serious and Donald Trump in the same sentence. Maybe that's the problem right there, is that I put serious and Donald Trump in the sentence. But I just wanted to break down that tax policy just to say that it is absolutely not populist. It is absolutely Republican establishment. It is going to do exactly what Ronald Reagan did, exactly what George W. Bush did, which is to gut the coffers, to put us in even more debt, and to give all of this wealth to the top 1%, which is the exact reason why we don't have an economy that is growing at the rate that they claim they want it to grow at, for all the reasons that I previously outlined and I will outline when we come back after this break. All right, I want you to join the conversation. 857-600-0518. That's my phone number. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back right after this. What's going on, everyone? This is Benjamin Dixon, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you how you can support the Benjamin Dixon Show. One thing I've learned over the last few months is that it is impossible for us to do this without you. Every time you click on a link, every time you read an article, every time you share a podcast or share a YouTube video, you are absolutely supporting our show. And without you, it's simply impossible. But there's another way you can support us. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com and register for our blog. You will be directly contributing to the success of the Benjamin Dixon Show by registering for our blog. You will help us increase our audience and increase our reach. Remember, every click counts, every subscribe counts, and every share counts. So go over to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com, click on the Contact Us tab, and register for our blog today. There is a radical, violent revolution taking place in America right now, figuratively speaking, where we are ripping from the status quo the very notion that they have the right to define the status quo. We are ripping it from them. We are telling them that they no longer get to decide what America is going to look like. And that is terrifying for a lot of people. That is downright terrifying when someone comes into your home only to help you to understand that your home is not yours in isolation, that we share this home equally, and that we have the right to be comfortable in this home, just as much right as you have to be comfortable, so that a white Christian straight man, the comfort that he feels in America will be experienced by the gay Black woman and every other intersection that has been erased. That, my friends, that is a revolution if I have ever seen one. That is something, that is the next stage of evolution in America.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
He's obviously he's a radio show host or something like that.
You're damn right I am. Hey, no. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody sent me yesterday. Somebody sent me that sample of a blog of video blogcasts, basically what I do. And they were talking about an issue, and somehow my name came up, and they were like, "Who the fuck is Ben Dixon?" and I just had to sample it. I couldn't resist it. That's my new favorite sample. So yeah, thank you for listening. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that through the podcast and the YouTube channel that that I don't give you the regular corporate commercials that I run. So we're making a transition there, and you can help support us by going to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com and registering for our blog. You don't have to send us money, not yet, maybe eventually, but right now registering for our blog is one of the best things that you could do to help us. I want to get right back down to business. Donald Trump's tax policy, and before I move on to Syria and Putin, I want to talk about this notion about growing the economy at a faster rate than we're already growing it. Right now, we're growing at a rate of about 2.2%. And Bill O'Reilly, at the end of that last segment that I played, clip that I played, is blaming this on President Obama. I think the blame may lay at the feet of President Obama, but not for the reasons that Bill O'Reilly or Donald Trump or any Republican would ever admit to. I think the economy would have grown at a much faster rate if, instead of giving all of the money, the bailout money, to the banks, we bailed out the middle class. And I believe it was Elizabeth Warren, her first entrance into the national stage was because this was one of her recommendations, was that we should use this money to help mortgage owners, help people who are underwater with their loans. Just pour this money into the middle class, and you see that the economy will grow much quicker, because the economic growth is actually based on economic activity, how much people are how active people are in the economy, how active people are buying things, how actively are people spending money. The economic growth is an increase in activity. And when you have such a large segment of America not able to participate in the economy is not going to grow, i.e. a recession, or it's not going to grow as quickly as possible. So I would lay this at the feet of the entire paradigm of the 2008, 2009 bailout, which included President Obama, but absolutely not for the reasons that the Republicans think. Republicans think that we need to cut taxes more, and that's the only silver bullet to economic growth. This is not true. This is one of the biggest myths of Republican economic theory. This has been the lie perpetuated on us or forced on us for the last 35 years. It does not work. If your tax top marginal rate is at 90% and you're looking for a way to stimulate the economy, then a tax cut may be the solution. Right. And that's what we saw with JFK. He cut the top marginal rate from, I believe, 90% down to 75%. And we saw economic growth. If your top marginal rate is at 70-something% and you want to stimulate growth, then, maybe a tax cut will stimulate growth. Right. And that's somewhat of what Ronald Reagan did. But Ronald Reagan said, we're going from 75% down to 25%. Right. This insane reduction, which saw an insane increase in the deficit and the debt, so much so that he had to later on raise taxes. Right. So he went entirely too far with this idea. However, you cannot continue to cut taxes and expect it to stimulate growth when we have cut taxes so low to the point where now we cannot sustain the government because of how low you cut the taxes. Not only that, that's not the reason the economy won't grow, but because at some point, companies are now saying we no longer have this incentive to invest because investment is a buffer against taxes. I've said a lot right there. I have an actual article that I wrote about this many years ago, and I would throw it in the link so that you can see what I'm trying to say to make it more plain. When companies make decisions, they generally don't make investment decisions simply because of tax rates. They make investment decisions because they have an opportunity to grow their company and make larger profit margins. And because investments is a buffer against taxation, they will not have to pay taxes on the dollars that they have invested. It's basic, not immediately. They will have to pay profit on they will have to pay taxes on the profits that they gain from that investment. But investments are generally, they can write them off. And Jeb Bush and Donald Trump are trying to expand that even more so. Right. But we have this notion in Republican economic theory that simply the act of cutting taxes is a natural stimulant. This is not the case. If it was, then why was it during the Bush administration when taxes were cut, the Bush tax cuts, we did not see this booming economy that was sustainable beyond that could be measured beyond the boom and bust cycle that we have already. This is the thing that people don't tell you about Reaganomics and even Clinton era, even the Clinton era. There are some fiscal policies that actually stimulate economic growth. Yes. But can you separate it out from the natural business cycle and say this particular policy is exactly why the economy grew? And what Republicans have been saying for the last 40 years is because Ronald Reagan cut taxes, this is why the economy grew. And this is not necessarily the case. This is not necessarily the case for many reasons, the least of which is that there was a boom after a recession. But that's not important. Here's what's important. The important thing is they're trying to continue this paradigm and say all we have to do now is cut taxes again, and that will stimulate economic growth. And this is not the case. This is all based on the Laffer curve. This is all based on a guy who drew up this economic theory on a napkin in a meeting with Donald Rumsfeld. It was either Donald Rumsfeld or Dick Cheney and Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. They've based their entire paradigm off of this, and they've been pounding the drums of this forever. Here's the situation, though. If you have to make a decision between investing, which is risky, and keeping your money, it's really a question of which is riskier, which is going to cost you more. Making the investment, which is going to cost you in terms of capital, it's going to cost you in terms of interest rates, and it's going to cost you in terms of just the general risk. Or sitting on your money. What does sitting on your money cost you? It costs you taxes. So if taxes are so low that it is more profitable, or it is easier for them to simply sit on those profits. And I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a case study that you can actually go look at, where it's cheaper and less risky to actually sit on your profits versus taking the risk of investing in your company. Companies will make the right decision, which is it is safer for us to sit on our profits because taxes are so low. We are not going to get an increase. We're not going to get a profit that is going to be worth the risk, the exchange of the risk. Here's your case study for you to look at. Look at all of the wealth that was caged up during the financial crisis, immediately after the financial crisis. $2 trillion worth of wealth that was accessible, that could have been invested, but it was not invested. Now you tell me, what were they waiting on? Were they waiting on the next tax cut? No, they weren't, because there was no tax cut to come. President Obama actually expired the Bush tax cuts, and companies continued to invest. In other words, any serious business, any serious company is not waiting on a tax cut to decide whether or not they're going to make an investment. They're going to make an investment because they see an opportunity. That's just one argument. Here's the other argument. They're going to make an investment where they see demand. They are going to make an investment where they see demand. Where does demand come from? It comes from the overwhelming number of us who are in the middle class and who are in the lower middle class, and those of us who are in poverty, because people in poverty still still purchase and still consume. So if there is no demand, then companies are not going to invest. They're not going to invest in places where there is no demand. Why do you think they do years and years of market research before they ever launch a product? Because they need to know what type of demand is there. If you want to stimulate the economy, you invest in the middle class, because the middle class is going to consume. Consumption drives demand, and demand is supplied by companies. That's just the normal basic flow. But what Republicans have done, and this is what Donald Trump's tax plan does, this is what Jeb Bush's tax plan does, this is what George W. Bush tax plan did, and this is what Ronald Reagan's tax plan did. What they've done is say, no, we want to make the investment, the tax investment, in the supply side of the economy, and make sure that all of the supply is not encumbered by regulation, that the supply is not encumbered by taxes, over burdensome taxes, and that they can be competitive, and all this jargon. But what that has done over the last 35 years is put the emphasis on the supply side of the equation and left the demand side of the equation for 30 years dependent on taxes. I'm sorry, not taxes, but dependent on credit. I've got a lot going through my brain this morning. My brain is moving faster than my mouth is moving. But for the last 35 years, we have been dependent on credit to supply the demand for all of the products in the economy. And now the credit markets have dried up and it has been exposed. The truth of the matter is the middle class just does not have money to consume. This is why the economy is growing at a stagnant 2.2%, because the middle class does not have credit to consume and the middle class does not have wealth to consume. And the top 1% does not have any incentive to consume because they have everything they need. It's like playing poker. It's like playing poker. I love playing Texas Hold'em. Once you have so much money on the table, once you have so much more money on the table than everyone else, it's no longer meaningful for you to even participate. What does a bet of $500 matter to you when you're sitting back with $500,000 on the table? It's pennies. It's like, it's not even worth me getting involved. So you take your chips, you cash out, and you go sit on your yacht, figuratively speaking. The entire framework of Republican thinking with regard to taxation and fiscal policy is not only is it ass backwards and wrong, but is delusional, because we're continuing to do the same things over and over again, and people are accepting it as the gospel truth when there is statistical evidence to the contrary, and there is absolutely no statistical evidence to suggest that these tax cuts are the causal link in economic growth. They correlated with economic growth, but they were not the causal link. We don't have any evidence to show that it's the causal link. And even if it was, let's go down the logical extreme. How far do you cut taxes to continue to stimulate growth? When we get to 15%, is that low enough? What happens when the economy stops growing at 15% taxes? Do we need to cut it down to 10%? What happens when the economy stops growing at 10%? Do we need to cut it down to 1%? Okay, what happens when the economy stops growing at 1% tax rates? You have nowhere else to cut. And instead of using the tax revenues that we could have generated over the last 35 years to continue to grow the middle class, which would have continued to grow the demand for all of these ridiculous products that don't do anything for anybody. All the, okay, let me stop lying. My gadgets really do help me out a lot for my business. But instead of using the tax coffers to drive demand, we've been using it to drive supply, and nobody has money to buy this shit anymore. That's why the economy, Bill O'Reilly, is growing at 2.2%. That's why I do place this somewhat at President Obama as well, because he was involved in those negotiations with regard to the bailout. Instead of investing that money in the middle class, if that money, imagine if $1 trillion of revenue went into the hands of the middle class. People's homes would have been caught up on, which means money went into the bank. People would have paid off their car loans, which means money goes into the bank. It has the same exact effect of saving the banks with the double whammy of stimulating the economy. But these people can't see that because they cannot imagine for the life of them investing any longer in the American middle class. And my favorite radio host, Randy Rhodes, would say that's because they're interested in investing in China's middle class. But that's an entirely different conversation. All right. Speaking of other parts of the world, President Obama spoke before the UN with and followed up. I don't know who went first, but shortly around that same time, President Putin spoke at the UN, and they had competing speeches. Both of them looked and essentially called out the other nation for their role in Syria. Later on, they had a meeting that President Putin said was surprisingly frank and highly productive. And this is all in regards to what's happening in Syria. This morning, a report came out that Syria has, that Russia, the Kremlin, has authorized, the parliament rather, has authorized the Kremlin to use military force in Syria. Bill O'Reilly actually had a meaningful conversation again with Donald Trump with regards to this. A lot of people say that Donald Trump was an epic fail on this question. I'm going to disagree with liberals on this. I do not think that Donald Trump failed this question. And I want to play it for you because it is the, well, that's what we're talking about. So here's Donald Trump again, and this time on Syria.
Putin is now taking over what we started, and he's going into Syria, and he frankly wants to fight ISIS, and I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, I said that a year ago, and everybody said, oh, that's terrible. If he wants to fight ISIS, let him fight ISIS. Why do we always have to do everything? But he wants to go in, he wants to fight ISIS, wants to keep your leadership, your current leadership, Assad, in Syria. And I'm looking at Assad and saying, maybe he's better than the kind of people that we're supposed to be backing.
All right, I guess I'm stopping it there. I put these breaks in here because just, you know why. I already told you why. So a lot of people, I read 2 different articles last night about how great of an epic fail this was for Donald Trump. I honestly don't see the fail on this because we've discussed this on this show many times. There is no good solution in Syria. If we do nothing, then the war rages on. If we get involved, that requires us sending troops, and no one wants to send American troops over there to actually to push back ISIS. And we're talking particularly with regard to ISIS. There are like 3 different wars going on: ISIS versus Syria, ISIS versus a rebellion, and the rebellion versus Syria. So you have this entire cluster F of forces happening in Syria. And the United States has not gotten involved enough to shore up the rebellion to beat back both Bashar al-Assad as well as ISIS. And so now there is a vacuum in Syria, and there is an opportunity for Russia to go in and to push back ISIS and to help Assad. Here's the problem. We don't want Assad to remain. And why we don't want him to remain for the human, for the human tragedy, for the I can't think of the word right now, but for his human rights violations, for all the things that he's done wrong. Of course, we want him gone. He's an evil dictator, right? He's an evil dictator. However, he was once an ally of ours. He was once considered a friend of ours, if not an ally. And so now we're at the point where we want to get rid of him, but we don't want to get rid of him enough to actually do what's necessary to get rid of him. And now that created a vacuum in the Middle East, which was also exacerbated by the destruction of Iran. I mean, of Iraq. You have all of these forces that America has had their hand in creating, and now Russia essentially is going to go in and clean up our mess. As horrible as that sentence sounds, if we're not going to do it, who the hell is going to do it? If we're not going to commit troops, somebody is going to have to put troops on the ground to beat back ISIS. Now, if we put troops on the ground and beat back ISIS, then we could do it in favor of the rebellion against Bashar al-Assad. But we're not willing to do that. And so Russia is saying they're willing to do that. And so they're going to go in there and beat back ISIS and back up and support Bashar al-Assad. I don't see any other choice that we have at this point besides saying, you know what, we screw the pooch in the entire region, and now Russia is going in to fill this void that we created when we attacked Iraq. So I mean, there is no good solution here. Maybe there's something obvious that I'm missing, but as much as I read and as much as I listen and as much as I study international relations, I do not see another opportunity to make things play out in that region to our favor, except for doing what we don't want to do, which is put troops on the ground. All right, caller, what's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, how you doing, man? This is Patrick from Flint, Michigan.
Welcome aboard, Patrick. What's going on?
Hey, nothing much, man. Love the topic, love the show. I believe the word you were looking for was genocide.
Thank you.
But the idea of it is that we are just simply a war-weary nation. We don't want to go to fight nobody no more. We're tired. We don't want to do it. And that's the reason why you can't half commit. One of the things that I believe that President Obama did wrong was he half committed. Those airstrikes were never going to be enough to go ahead and handle the situation. The only way you handle the situation is with troops. You would have to put boots on the ground. The country is just simply tired of war, and so he did his political calculus, and it came up. The country don't want to go back to war. Now, some of the hawks wish he would have went. They'll always say that we didn't want to pull everybody out of Afghanistan, pull people out of Iraq. We created this vacuum, which in part could be true. But the idea of it is we're just simply war weary. There is no good solutions for this. And the idea of Putin coming in gives at least the hint that there could be potential stability. As bad as Assad may be, again, Donald Trump was right. And I know, God, even saying that even sounds bad.
Sounds ridiculous, right?
Absolutely. But he's right. If you think about it, sometimes I know, in Christian talk, they don't like to deal with the devil you don't know, or the devil you do know. So the idea is just that. So I believe that right now, allowing them to go ahead and move forward, us taking a step back, or even working with them to try to bring an end to this is probably the most viable solution that's out there for us right now.
Thanks so much for the call, Patrick. You're absolutely spot on with that. And I couldn't agree with you more. With one exception, I don't think that we are going to work with Russia on it. I think we're just going to, I think it's too politically toxic for us to ever consider working with Russia when Russia is trying to back up Assad. But I think we will take a back seat and say, you know what, no comment. Whatever Russia wants to do, let them go in and do it, because we're not willing to commit. And I don't think we should commit. We've done enough damage in the region. If Russia, and this is exactly what Donald Trump said, Donald Trump does, he has his moments of intellect, of saying something rational. And then for the most part, he's just a buffoon. But he said, if Russia wants to go in there and they want to fix the problem and bring stability, then what's it to us? Except for this one thing. And this is what the Hawks are absolutely terrified. And this is Bill O'Reilly's response to that exact comment. Here's Bill O'Reilly talking to Donald Trump one last time.
What's the downside of Putin fighting ISIS?
I say there's very little downside with Putin fighting ISIS, and Putin wants to keep ISIS out of Russia.
I'm going to tell you what the downside is.
Well, you're going to say the downside is we're losing control of the Middle East.
No.
But with this kind of leadership, we're never going to have control of anything.
Once Putin gets in and fights ISIS on behalf of Assad, Putin runs Syria. He owns it. He'll never get out. Never.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's like, okay, is that the... Is Putin having his hands in Syria more detrimental to international stability than ISIS having their hands permanently in Syria? And if we're not going to go and put troops on the ground to beat back ISIS, it's a war of entrenchment. It's a war. They will gain more and more territory. So this is the problem. We created the vacuum not by pulling out. We were there for a decade. We had to pull out. We created the vacuum by destabilizing the region in the first place. So you can't bring me a hawkish solution when it was a hawkish problem in the first place. You can't tell me we need more military to fix the problem when it was our military and our use of the military who broke the region and created the problem in the first place. So if Russia's going in, you know what? It does mean that Russia's going to have a foothold, but Russia can have a foothold anyway. Russia can have a foothold without putting troops on the ground. Russia can have a foothold just by sending arms over there, just by sending intelligence over there. So, I just think this is one of the worst situations that we've created that has absolutely no good solution that is going to be beneficial to America in isolation. However, I do see the potential for Russia. If Russia goes in there and destroys ISIS and props up Assad, then you do have stability. It's just stability with a son of a bitch. And he's no longer our son of a bitch. He will be Russia's son of a bitch. And hopefully you understand the reference of that. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to talk about Planned Parenthood and everything that happened on Capitol Hill yesterday. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We'll be back after this.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. Welcome back. Oh, okay. I'm sitting here wondering why that particular music played. I triggered the wrong set of commercials. So anyway, just thinking out loud, ladies and gentlemen. So yesterday there was a hearing on Capitol Hill about defunding Planned Parenthood and about the atrocious videos that Carly Fiorina has been pounding the pavement about, which don't exist. So yesterday, Cicely Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood, was called out by Republican Representative Jason Chaffetz. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. And during that exchange, he shared this image, and I'm putting it on the screen. I'll do my best to describe it to the podcast radio listeners. So essentially, it shows the decrease in cancer screening and prevention services from 2 million in 2006 down to just underneath 1 million in 2013, and an increase in abortions over the same time period from 289,000 to 327,000. These graphs intersect as if there has been a tremendous increase in abortions compared to a tremendous decrease in cancer screening and prevention services. And so he puts this on the screen as a gotcha moment for Cicely Richards. And she did what she knew how to do. Was first, she was like, I have never seen this graph before, so I can't speak to the validity of it. Then they saw the footnote, which you can see here is Americans United for Life, which is an anti-abortion activist group. And so they rejected it based on that premise. But if they had a chance to look at it live, closer, they would have called out the same thing that Vox called out. And I'll show you the image from Vox, is that they've shown an increase in abortions of maybe, let's do the math. What are we talking about? Like less than 35,000, right? 45,000. Let's give it 45,000. 45,000 increase, real numbers, increase in abortions over the last between 2006 and 2013, and we see a decrease of over 1 million cancer screenings. So there is a large decrease in cancer screenings and prevention services compared to a very modest increase in the number of abortions. And maybe modest is not the appropriate word when you're talking about abortions, but a very small amount of, over a 7-year period. But it gives a very distorted view. And if you watch the clip, I didn't bring the clip, but if you watch the clip, you see a woman in the background who's just shaking her head, nodding like, yeah, Planned Parenthood, all they want to do is abortions. Look at the emphasis that they're placing on abortions, and they're not even doing cancer screenings. It just speaks to the level with which conservatives are willing to blatantly lie, to blatantly distort reality, and to blatantly deceive without any regard to actual numbers. You cannot physically have 300,000 represented as a greater number than 900,000. And that's what this graph shows. It gives the impression that Planned Parenthood is performing way more abortions than they are cancer screenings, when the reality is they're performing way more cancer screenings than they are performing abortions. Now, someone can ask the legitimate question, why have they decreased so many cancer screenings and prevention services over the last between 2006 and 2013? I can't answer that question because I didn't have enough time to research it, but I'm sure somebody out there in the interwebs knows the answer to that. But you still cannot represent the data in that way where you have 300,000 above 900,000. So Vox came out with, Vox is a great site. I think it was, I forgot who the founder was of Vox. But anyway, they came out with a graph that represented more accurately what it should have looked like. And if you look at this, and unfortunately for those of you who are listening, you probably have to go online and look at these images, but I'll describe them the best way that I can. You will see a sharp decline in cancer screening and prevention services, yes, but you also see a flat line, essentially a flat line in abortion services over the period between 2006 and 2013. So this graph that we're looking at now shows the truth that for some reason there is a decrease in cancer screening and prevention services, but it's not at the expense of an increase in abortions, because abortions have flatlined. It's little things like this, which are actually very huge things. This willingness to distort reality, this willingness to distort the truth and to deceive, and the willingness of conservatives to believe it. Trying to find that noise in my microphone. The willingness of conservatives to believe it and eat it up as if it is factual when it is the absolute opposite. It is an untruth. It is a lie. It is a distortion. It is a deception. But it doesn't matter so long as that deception feeds and caters to their biases. And so then Vox went one step further. This is another image by Vox, and it shows you what Planned. And listen, I don't have any serious commitment to Planned Parenthood, other than the fact that I utilized their services when I didn't have insurance and I was in college, right? I think a lot of people who did not have insurance and were young in college, they knew Planned Parenthood was there. You can get STD screenings, you can get all kind of checks. It's primarily there for women, but they service men too, right? So I'm not here as an advocate for Planned Parenthood. I'm here as an advocate for the truth. For the love of God, can we not just be factual? You can talk about, hang on, let me take this off the screen because, let me drive this point home. You can talk about the disturbing reality of abortions. You can talk about the ridiculous numbers of abortions that are performed in the United States. You can drive all those points home, and I don't know many people who can argue against you. Those arguments would be factual, because if you've ever seen images from an abortion, it is one of the most disturbing things you will ever see. If you see the number of abortions that take place across the country, anyone who can look at the number of abortions and not think that we should do something to reduce it without taking away the woman's right to choose, I think is an extremist. I don't think there's anything wrong with us wanting to reduce the demand and the need for abortions. But Republicans don't want to do that. They want to only restrict a woman's right to get an abortion. And so what I'm saying is, I'm not here pro-abortion. No, that would be disingenuous to my personal convictions, right? What I have a personal conviction towards the truth. And the pro-life movement goes leaps and bounds above beyond the truth into just straight fabricate. I can't even talk this morning because it's so ridiculous. Straight fabrications, straight out lies, straight distortions, deceiving the people. And the people are no better because they don't care that they're being lied to. They don't care that there really is no video that Carla Fiorina is talking about. They don't care that this graph that a congressman presented as evidence was a complete distortion of the truth. They don't care. So long as it confirms their biases and so long as it forwards their narrative. I'm an advocate for the truth. And the truth of the matter is, you guys have been lying for a long time about the reality of what Planned Parenthood does. All you have to do is convey the reality of abortions. And if you really wanted to fix abortions, there are two really great solutions that you would never consider because it doesn't fit into the pro-life paradigm. You don't want to consider it. Number one would be to get church people from having abortions. 65% of all abortions are performed on Christian patients. So start there. Right? If you really wanted to attack and reduce the number of abortions, go to your church. Talk to your pastor. Tell him to stop just preaching abstinence because abstinence isn't working. There's a solution right there. If you fix the problem in the church, in Christian, then you will see a reduction of 65%, but you don't want that. You don't really want that. You don't want to see abortions go down by 65%. You want to take away a woman's right to choose. And then the other thing that you could do, which would really reduce the number of abortions, which is the number one reason women get abortions, is because of poverty, income. They're not able to afford children, and people want to have sex. Yes, people are going to have sex. And sometimes when you have sex and you have sex so much, you don't protect yourself as much and you get pregnant, and then you realize you can't afford this baby. What you want to do is, instead of addressing poverty, instead of building the middle class, you want to tell people don't have sex and don't have the right to choose. Does anybody understand the glaring ridiculousness of these two notions? That they're out here telling everyone else what to do with their body when the majority of the people who are getting abortions are in your church. You just go to your church. Why don't you just go to your church and tell them what to do with their body there? And then the overwhelming number of people who get abortions because they cannot afford children. But you don't want to address anything that's going to alleviate poverty. You just want to tell them stop having sex. And to put the icing on the cake, you will go to unseen levels of deception and outright lies to forward this narrative. Like I said, I don't have any particular allegiance to Planned Parenthood. I have a particular allegiance to the truth, and I will call out lies and bullshit every time I see it. And I've seen nothing but flagrant lies and propaganda from the pro-life movement for so long that it has become a detriment to their own cause, when there are actually real solutions that I don't think anybody would argue against. I don't think anybody would argue against helping the middle class, growing the middle class, alleviating poverty, which would then turn around and alleviate the number of abortions that are needed or demanded. I don't think anybody would be against you going into your churches and teaching sex education versus just abstinence, which we would see a tremendous drop. I don't know how many times I could say this, and it doesn't matter. That's the thing that really ticks me off, that it does not matter. They would rather Ted Cruz get in front of the Senate and give an hour-long speech like he did yesterday about the evils of Planned Parenthood and the impotence of the Republican leadership to stop it, when in reality, there are really real practical solutions to reduce the need for abortions. And this is why I say all the time, the pro-life movement's not really pro-life. Pro-life movement doesn't want to see abortions come to an end or be reduced. They are simply about controlling human sexuality. And that's the truth. And that's the truth that I'm committed to exposing. And so that chart, you can see the links. I have links on my site. You can go look at the links. You can see how glaringly obvious and ridiculous this deception was. And then I want you to go back and watch the video and see all of the people in the audience, not all the people, it's about 2 people in the audience who were just nodding their head saying amen to something that was a glaring lie. But so long as it fits their narrative. I'm actually out of time, but I'm going to take this call. Caller, you are live on the air. What is your name, comment, and a question?
Hey, Ben, it's Pedro. How's it going?
It's going great, Pedro. What's on your mind today?
All right. I'm sorry to keep being a regular caller. I just sort of wanted to link stuff together because I think I'm noticing it's becoming more of a trend as these talking points of abortion, same-sex marriage, religion, and like Islam are all coming together. I've noticed as I've spoken to more and more like right-wingers and extreme people who have all these things like ban Islam, tell people who can or can't get married, defund Planned Parenthood. I've noticed that, I think you might have mentioned this, but that the truth or the facts are not important to them. That they'll go with whatever their own narrative is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Because and I think, and this is going to sound like an insult, and I honestly don't mean it this way. But I think that these people, who I'm assuming most of them are like devout church-going people of whatever denomination, I think they've been taught that whatever most people perceive as reality is not how reality is or should be, but it's sort of like a sinned or flawed world. The most major hint I got at that was like an interview that Kim Davis did, when she was talking about her reaction to all of the press and everything that she got. She said that people were calling her names and words that she didn't use when she was, quote, of this world. But then when she turned to Jesus, she saw things differently and blah, 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 blah. So I think that's what to link all those together, what the major issue is that even though to most logical,
No, go ahead.
I think I'm hearing feedback.
Yeah.
Even though to most logical, rational people who will take the time to step back and look at the facts and understand that no, Planned Parenthood isn't just like a baby slaughterhouse, or no, Islam isn't just a death cult. What most people that are reacting to oppose to our views, what they're doing is taking what they've been told by Fox News, by their bosses at work, by their pastors or whoever at church. And that's what they will run with no matter what's being told to them. Anything else that goes beyond that is a lie, perhaps from Satan, perhaps from communists, from what have you. They're literally looking at reality differently.
Yeah.
And the issue is that we can't, I think somehow, socially, this is like not a forced thing, but somehow we have to teach these people, no matter what you believe, that you can't look at reality one way and then never change it, because what'll lead to fanaticism.
Yeah, Pedro. First of all, let me say, you never have to apologize about calling in. I appreciate your call because you have great insight, and I think you just weave together. You weave together everything that I talked about this morning. You found that I like to try to find a thread that connects everything, and you actually did that for me. So feel free to call anytime. There is absolutely this delusion that occurs in human beings, and I'm not going to blame this all on conservatives. I think it is it's possible for everyone to suffer from this, and that is this idea that everyone else is wrong and I'm right. And it becomes magnified when you put it in a large group of people and you have a lot of people who agree with you, and so now the rest of the world is wrong and we're right. And so they begin to reject objective data that shows them, no, my friend, you're absolutely wrong on this. You're absolutely wrong on trickle-down economics. But that doesn't matter. The facts do not matter to them because they have their collective circle, this circle jerk of ignorance, where they are just reassuring each other that this is going to work against all evidence. And I think it may be prevalent in religious circles. I think it may be prevalent in religious circles because of the idea that we have of faith and accepting things that we don't have evidence for. That makes us a lot more vulnerable to lies, deceptions, half-truth, and charlatans. Right. So we are a lot more vulnerable because we are already accepting the idea of God on faith. So then what more is it? How difficult is it to accept lies about Planned Parenthood on faith? It's not that difficult to go to the next step and accept lies about the economy on faith. It's not that difficult to go to the next step and accept the lies about President Obama's birth certificate on faith. And so it's all connected, and it's all based on this. I believe it's a human frailty. It's a human failing, rather, that we have the propensity to believe things that is just simply confirming our own biases. And that is a problem when it gets, especially when we get to things about our environment. And now people are looking at scientific consensus, objective data, and they are rejecting it based on faith that, you know, God gave us dominion over this world. So, you know, not to make my religious brethren look like complete Neanderthals, but it is a problem. It is a problem. Sure. And I think you aptly defined it. Pedro, thanks so much for the call, man. And call back anytime.
All right. Rock on, dude.
Will do. Folks, thank you for your time. I think I'm going to stop here. One of the things that a lot of people said was that we should just go a little bit longer. And so I will start going a little bit longer. And I'm going to build out to an hour and a half and possibly 2 hours, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Stay tuned. We have some really exciting things coming up. I'm getting into some relationships with some organizations that are great partners for what we're doing. And all of it's possible because I have time on Tuesday and Thursday to actually build out the business end of the show. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com, click on the Contact Us tab, send me a note, sign up for our blog, tell me what you think, tell me where I was wrong. I have a lot of people who correct me. And one thing about when you try to be accurate is that when you make a mistake, people will call you out on it. If I was just up here just talking, you know, yin yang, then that's what my mother says. She said yin yang is just talking. Then people wouldn't care that I wasn't accurate. But I try my best to be accurate, so I want you to feel free to send me corrections, send me ideas for shows, etc. This is your show as much as it is mine. I will see you guys on Friday. Take it easy. Oh, I have no mute.
We, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other. That I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
And we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
We need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
I want to play something real quick. My favorite clip. This is my new favorite clip.
Dixon. He's obviously he's a radio show host or something like that.
You're damn right I am. I'll see you guys later.